Hi guys, welcome back to Tea Time. I have a new friend on. This is the illustrious Admiral Paco.
Greetings, friends.
Admiral Paco has his own YouTube channel, which I am going to link you to in the description, so that way you can go support Admiral Paco and all of his not-for-real war crimes. But we don't talk about that.
Yep, definitely no war crimes here.
Today we're actually going to be talking about Star Wars, and I mean all of it. Not all of it, just the movie is all of it.
A series where there definitely aren't any war crimes. Wait.
Paco, would you like to start us off?
Oh, certainly. I myself have been a Star Wars fan for a very long time. I first saw the films in the mid-90s, the original trilogy. I saw the original trilogy before the prequels came out. I can put it that way. And I really loved the original series. I loved the prequels, and I have very mixed feelings about the sequels. But I have I have overall enjoyed all of those things for a wide variety of different reasons.
I hardcore missed Star Wars, and I only started rewatching it because everybody and their mother kept bitching at me about the latest trilogy with Daisy and John Boyega. They are not married, but I forget her last name.
Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley. I was like, why do I feel like I want to say Ridley? Then I'm thinking of his Aliens.
Yep, that was my thought on Ridley as well. Ridley Aliens, right? That's the association?
Yeah, but that's disingenuous to her. For the record,
Yeah.
John Boyega and Daisy Ridley, amazing, phenomenal actors. I'm really proud of them for having the gusto to get into Star Wars and then continue on past it because, in all honesty, it's Star Wars. Like, it's not that serious.
Yep. Even me as a Star Wars fan will acknowledge that.
The only thing I could think of that came out of Star Wars that has just never been allowed to die is all the memes. All the General Kenobi memes.
Yep. Yeah, if for most Star Wars fans, especially until relatively recently, the prequel trilogy was seen as this is an imposter of Star Wars, except for the memes. The prequel trilogy is just full of all of the Star Wars memes. Gold mine in that regards. Though I will say that I myself think that the prequel trilogy gets kind of a bad rap.
Oh, absolutely.
I will acknowledge that there are some improvements that could have been made to dialogue and acting direction, but I do think that the overall narrative of the prequel trilogy is very interesting.
I think from a viewpoint of writing, like the fact that it was written out of order, but now that all of them are done, if you watch them in order, it makes a comprehensive sense. It's just, it's weird. Even if you comprehended all of it, it's still weird.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that when it comes to the prequels, that from a character story standpoint, obviously we are following Anakin Skywalker. We are seeing his rise as a hero of the Jedi and fall into Darth Vader. Spoilers. That Vader is the main villain in the original trilogy. And so this prequel is setting up that rise and fall. But from the other interesting thing to me, story-wise, is that we are also seeing the fall of the Old Republic into the Empire. And I think that there is a lot that is interesting in how George Lucas writes that trilogy not only for the character of Anakin Skywalker, but also for the basically the general overarching theme of here is how something that we characterize as being good, democracy, can collapse into something that we consider bad, an empire.
Yeah, in the immortal words of the Joker, it just takes one bad day.
Yeah. Well, and in the case of the Old Republic, it took many bad days.
Yeah.
That is like, for me, my educational background is history and social studies, and I am legitimately impressed about George Lucas in crafting that narrative through the prequels, in that it does offer a reasonable analog of how democracies fall to authoritarianism, which is that it happens slowly and then all at once. Now, it doesn't generally happen in like a execute order 66 kind of fashion, but it is often a slow wearing away of the systems, which is presented in the movies. Like we get from random bits of dialogue the fact that the regular systems of democracy are breaking down. Now, obviously in the movies, this is because Palpatine is a super genius mastermind and is masterminding everything behind the scenes.
When you have enough money to literally bankroll your own interests.
Yeah. Well, and it also helps when you lead both sides of the Civil War at the same time.
Palpatine was playing 4D chess, everybody else was playing checkers.
Yeah. You can't lose the Civil War if you're fighting on both sides of the Civil War. But so from a narrative standpoint of like world building, the prequels really appeal to me in that way of crafting this universe with a larger geopolitical setting that makes a reasonably high degree of sense, and moving that geopolitical situation that exists in episode 1 to the geopolitical situation that exists in episode 3 that sets up what we see in episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Right, it's kind of like, it's a bad analogy, but the only thing I think of is, hey guys, before Hitler and his Nazi party became Hitler and his Nazi party, Hitler was technically an officially sworn in leader of the German people. He didn't start out as the megalomaniac we know. He actually started out as a guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I actually would argue that's not a bad analogy. As George Lucas has said that the Empire, as he created it in the original series, like, it had a lot of basis on Nazi Germany. I mean, there's a reason that he calls the regular infantry of the Empire stormtroopers. Like, he yoinked that from the Nazi stormtroopers.
The Blitzkrieg.
Yeah. But yeah, it, like, the story of those first 6 films are, like, from a geopolitical sense, are a mimicking narrative of the rise of Nazi Germany. Not quite the fall of Nazi Germany. That worked a little differently.
That was monumentally bad decision after bad decision.
Yeah. Um, but from a character perspective, uh, the Star Wars universe has a lot of really compelling characters to attach to, and with the original trilogy in particular, I think that was one of its biggest selling points.
Everybody loved Princess Leia.
Yeah, like Princess Leia, wonderful. Han Solo, amazing. Luke Skywalker, the epitome of hero's journey hero.
But it worked for a movie made in, what, the 70s?
76, I think?
Right, for a movie made in the 70s, it was very on the nose as far as plot A, B, and C to get to the overall finale. But you can't fault it for that because George Lucas was like, but what if it's a space opera? Which traditionally had failed in other iterations because nobody liked space operas. But this was different.
Yeah, like the original movie in particular is yep, this is certainly the hero's journey, all right. But it's executed so well.
Right. I like to bring up the fact that for people that are like, hero's journeys never work, I was like, for the record, hero's journey is what every fucking video game for the past 30 years has been. It's just painted in a very appealing way that you guys don't think it is. It is literally a hero's journey. That's it.
Yeah. Yep. And I also think it's funny, even with like Star Wars, that it's only been in the last, I don't know, 15 or 20 years that people have really pointed to episode 4, the original episode, as being, yep, this is just paint by numbers hero's journey. Well, yeah, you're only saying that now because it's been explicitly said and pointed out to you that that's just paint by numbers hero's journey. That wasn't talked about at the time. At least as far as I've been able to see.
Yeah.
It was just this cool space story with incredible special effects.
For the 70s.
In the 70s. And really good characters. And I would even say, if you can even find the original non-special edition version of it, like, it still holds up.
Oh, I'm sure when I go back home, I'll bug my brother about it. It's like, hey, where are Dad's old VHSs of the Star Wars series?
I do have the originals on VHS somewhere.
Come, gather around the Snapchat, children. Let me tell you what a VHS was.
Yeah, but like we can explain what VHSs are. We can also talk about floppy disks and this other fancy thing called records. Now
known in the modern day as vinyls. Yep. Oh man, we are old. I was there, yeah. Gandalf. I was there 3,000 years ago.
I can talk about that series another time.
Yeah, but I feel like as far as the hero's journey goes, what people honestly sometimes think really, really hardcore miss is that, hey guys, Anakin Skywalker is a tragedy. Like, from beginning to end, it is a tragedy, his entire story. Because that's what he was set up to be.
Yep, 100%. 100%. It is one of the... Like, I actually think that the third movie of the prequels, this may be a controversial opinion. I think the third movie of the prequels is arguably the best of those three. Though it is very hard for me to watch. Because of the tragic nature of that film, not only in the end of the Jedi Order and the end of the Republic, but also in the fall of Anakin into Darth Vader. That from a storytelling perspective is very interesting to me, and I do think that it is overall very compelling, even if not executed perfectly.
Well, no story's ever executed perfectly. There's always going to be fumbles, falls, and plot holes. I'm sorry, there's plot holes in everything, I promise you.
Yeah, and one of the areas of criticism that I often see in the downfall of Anakin is the scene where Padme confronts him on Mustafar, and the criticism I've generally seen in terms of the acting by oh shoot, why can't I think of the actor who plays Anakin?
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
I feel bad for not remembering his name off the top of my head.
Give me a minute, because I gotta think about it.
It'll probably come to me in a couple of minutes.
Hayden Christensen!
Hayden Christensen, thank you. There we go.
The only reason I was like, I kept making a thing of it. I was like, we're going on the hayride with the Christians. Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen's acting in that scene with Padme, I've often seen criticized as him overacting, like in a he's trying too hard.
Hey guys, calm down.
Well, and here's a perspective that I have on it. I think that's deliberate. And I think that it's a good acting choice, because we are looking at a man that just, like, killed that went to Mustafar and murdered all of the CS leaders after previously murdering dozens, if not hundreds, of Jedi in the Jedi Temple, including children. And now he's confronted with his wife, and he's trying to come up with any explanation that could justify what he just did.
Right.
And so I think that his portrayal in that scene of, like, basically madness and manicness is a deliberate choice to illustrate the, like, complete what have I done? Oh no, my wife is here. I need to somehow justify what has happened.
Well, I always like to point out to people, it's like, for the record, even though Anakin Skywalker is a tragedy from beginning to end, his fall into darkness wasn't because he thought he was all-powerful, all-knowing, I am the only one that can have the dark side power, tee-hee-hee, ha-ha-ha. It was very much a man who was very, very good at being evil and manipulative, whispering into his ear of, well, what about the woman you love? What happens if they take her away from you? That Palpatine preyed on Anakin's worst fear, and I think way deep down, Anakin was still a good person, so when he did everything he did, the murdering of his fellow Jedi, the children, choking his wife out, I have a feeling, even though the evil was there, it's not like he was enjoying it. I feel like that's another part that's adding to the manicism. Manicism is not a word. Manic episode. There we go.
Yeah.
Is because he's trying to confront the fact that I am doing all of this with what I believe to be a good reason, and also I am being the world's most unbelievable asshole for a petty reason.
Yeah. But I do think that is something that, well, we've been focusing on the films, but there is a lot of other Star Wars content out there.
Oh, there's so much content.
I am going to bring in one bit because I think that it describes Anakin, or some would say Darth Vader's character, really well, in that in one of the, I think it's in a comic, that he is pitted against some other dark side character who is beating him, and at some point that dark side character taunts him with a "Who could you possibly hate enough to defeat me?" And Darth Vader answers, "Myself," and
Oof.
kills the other dark side person who is behind him by stabbing himself through the chest to stab the other villain. And naturally, like, the Emperor comes in and saves him. The rest is not important. But I think that is the best way of describing Darth Vader, especially after Padme's death, in a why is Darth Vader evil from that point forward? Because he's lost everything and he hates himself for it.
Grief is a hell of a drug, ladies and gentlemen. This man was never actually allowed to grieve everything he lost, because he was shoved into, look at this dark empire that you get to rule. Okay, I don't think I wanted a dark empire to rule. I think I wanted my wife.
This wasn't the goal. This was not my end objective.
Right. And on top of it, right, as the more I was watching the movies, I realized something. And I'm pretty sure somebody on the internet pointed this out too. Luke, you are definitely your daddy's boy because you fight like him a little bit and you have the skill set for it. But your sister, Princess Padme, Leia, she is your father to a degree that should scare you, because this is all of Anakin's quick wit, inability to back down, his backtalk, and it is backed up with the fact that her mother was politician, keen sense of fight me in the pit, scrub, is there too. She is the worst version of both of them. It's just she was put into the political field because of circumstances. So I would hate to imagine a universe where, no, they didn't put her in the political field. Why?
Yeah.
She's scary. She killed a guy.
I've actually seen it described, and I tend to agree with this, that Leia is definitely the daughter of Anakin Skywalker. Luke is definitely the son of Padme.
Exactly. It's like they're twins, but not all twins are the same. And I think that's the reason why when people try and sit there and say, well, if anything had gone different, I'm sure Anakin Skywalker would have made a great dad. And I always tell them, that is absolutely not the point of his story. The point of his story is tragedy. So even if there is a universe where he gets his happily ever after, he himself doesn't know how to accept a happily ever after. He will start to look for things to hyper-focus on, because the thought of being happy, I think, terrifies him in some way. He's looking to fuck up his own happily ever after.
Yeah, I think that the big thing with Anakin, like the major weakness that he had that Palpatine was able to exploit, was that Anakin feared to lose what he loved. Like, that was the big flaw that Anakin had. He loved too much.
Sir, I think your empathy is a little bit too high. I think you should take a page out of my book. Have none.
You just need to tone that down a little bit.
You're at like an 11. Can you come down to like a 5?
Having said that, like, it to a degree is love in a somewhat like selfish way. He needed to have the people not solely because, like, oh, I really care about this other person and I want to make them happy, but in a, oh, I really care about this person, I can't afford for them to be lost. I can't afford to lose this person because I need them. That isn't to say that I don't think that he didn't genuinely care about these people, but it was also that, like his mother, like Padme, like Obi-Wan, really, but that that attachment was one of, I, Anakin, need them, and less so like a, oh, I really care for them and I wouldn't want anything bad to happen.
I kind of feel like this stems more from him being the child of a slave. I think because he didn't have a lot of stuff that was just his. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it stems
yeah.
from, he loves them, asterisk on this, he's never had anything that was just his. So I have a feeling that this weird obsession possessive thing is a byproduct of growing up the way he did. And then on top of it with the Jedi being like, you can't love anything, this boy doesn't know how to not love things. He is an empath through and through. You're fucking with him hard.
That is the other thing that is presented in those prequel films is that, you know, maybe the Jedi's focus on not attachment and that attachment bad really was not good for Anakin's psychology. Like, he really could have used a therapist in there somewhere to help with this rather than just attachment bad.
Yeah, I think this is the reason why I like to point this out to people. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, when that monk guy is teaching Aang how to open up his chakras, and the last one to get full chakra control is, you have to let go of everything. You can't be attached to anybody or anything because all of this is fleeting. For the record, that is a real thing. There are some people who supposedly have done this, but human beings are not designed to not give a shit. We give a shit about so much stuff that it's amazing we get anything else done in the world.
True.
Human being, even they've even proven this on animals. An animal will sit there and starve to death next to its snuggle companion rather than go to the barbed wire thing that'll give it food because it wants love more than it wants the thing that'll keep it alive.
It's a thing that for some animals and a lot of people that need of companionship is right on up there with like food and water.
Right. Which is why
the things that make your body function physically, they're like, that need of companionship can override that.
Yeah, like, best example I think I've seen in a movie that explains to you why human companionship is different than animal companionship is the zombie movie with Will Smith when they're not really zombies.
Oh yes, I know what movie you're referring to, but also cannot remember the title off the top of my head.
Right. In that movie, he literally has the mannequins and everything pretending to be people just going about their lives, and somebody told me, but he has a dog. I'm like, animal companionship is not a substitute for human companionship. There's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
And that's why when people are like, oh, but Anakin had the little R2-D2 robot, I'm like, mechanical companionship is also not a substitute for human companionship.
Well, and that's also a thing where I really appreciate, especially the second Clone Wars TV series that started in like 2007 or 2008. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, where Anakin got Ahsoka as a...
Yes.
Yeah.
As a Padawan, yeah.
I was just gonna say as a tag along, but I was like, that's not the right word.
Close enough. That is the only Star Wars TV series that I have seen every episode of. I am ashamed as a Star Wars fan that I have not watched all of the episodes of the Disney Plus Star Wars series. I'm sure that I will get to them at some point.
Here, I'll give you a quick spoiler. It's a lot.
It's a lot. But the point that I wanted to make with the Clone Wars TV series is that series allows so much more time to see the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan in particular, but also to see Anakin with Ahsoka or Anakin with Padme, and Anakin and Obi-Wan's, and Ahsoka's for that matter, relationship with the rest of the Jedi Order. And as far as like spin-off series go of major media platforms, that Clone Wars series does a really fantastic job of building on what the movies that it's based on were doing.
Yeah, I always took that series as like, okay, here are the movies. These are the major plot points you absolutely have to know. Here's the TV series. This is all the filler in between the major plot points that actually make you give a shit about the characters.
Yeah. It's as if the movies are a really good cake and the TV series is the icing on the cake.
Yeah, you can just watch the movies, it's a very plain cake, but if you watch the movies and also figure out how to time the TV series in between the movies, it actually tells you a pretty comprehensive story of how Anakin hardcore fell. Like, oh my god,
Yep.
This guy was going through it.
Yeah. And realistically, all you need to do is go Episode 1, Episode 2, The Clone Wars, Episode 3.
Yeah. I think this is also the reason why when Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of those movies was so upset wasn't because Anakin had, well, it had to do a little bit with that for the betraying of the Jedi,
Yeah.
but I think it was because he watched this kid go from nobody to Jedi Master to you crazy psychopath, all in the span of what, like 10, 15 years? He
A decade.
He speed ran his villain origin story.
Well, and he super speed ran it in that in Episode 3. Like he went from he went from the hero of the Jedi to the destroyer of the Jedi in what in the time frame of that film was probably like a week.
You know, I know speedrunning is a thing and people like to watch them. Sir, I feel like you skipped a lot of vital parts before you got to your villain origin story. You gotta go through, like, sad raccoon person phase before you get to villain origin story phase.
Well, that's what the Clone Wars TV show is for.
Yeah. I think, too, when people talk about... Because I feel like people don't talk about Padme enough. Like, they seem to hardcore
True.
skip her. The reason why Padme is a really important character in this is because she is actually a politician in this thin veneer of a comedy, it's more of a tragedy, that actually particularly gives a shit about what is happening to all star systems, because she realizes it's not just mine that's affected by these choices, it's everybody's, and if we mess up, it's going to make a domino effect.
Yeah.
But because
And-
she's the side
and
character,
again-
nobody cares.
She's the love interest. That there again, I think that the Clone Wars TV show does a really good job of sprinkling in some episodes that emphasize Padme's importance as a legitimate politician. One that I want to highlight again, of course, because I can't remember names or titles, and I can't remember the title of the episode. But the major plot point of that episode is that the Senate is voting on whether to expand the size of the military by ordering another batch of clones, slave soldiers, things that republics do. Totally not a war crime. Let me drink some tea.
We don't have time to unpack all of that, but...
Yeah. But in the episode, the end point of the episode is basically that Padme delivers a moving speech about what the Republic is actually fighting for, and that we shouldn't be spending money just on the war machine, but that we are we are doing this for the citizens of the Republic, and the citizens are suffering. A moving speech that is actually talking about what are we doing this for? Why are we fighting this war? And so this expansion of the military loses. The vote does not pass the measure to expand the war, so to speak. That's the characterization that it's presented in the episode. And at the very end, there is a great scene of Palpatine basically saying, "It's remarkable how I can have all this power and one senator can put a halt to what I have in motion." And there's a side villain character that has a well, what will we do now? And Palpatine basically acknowledges well, this is a setback. We'll just let things keep going. But the most important thing about that episode to me is that it reveals so much about Padme's character and about the importance that she actually plays in the overall story. It's a part of her story that is largely cut from the films. There are deleted scenes, both for episode 2 and episode 3, that provide Padme's character with a lot more depth and illustrate some of the other overall plot and world building that she's involved in. In episode 3, a number of scenes of hers that were cut illustrate that she was part of the group of senators that would end up starting the rebellion, thus illustrating that her as a character, if she had survived, likely would have also been on that course. It would have also, it's that kind of thing that in retrospect, it might have made for a very interesting episodes 4, 5, and 6. If Padme had survived and you end up with a Padme on the Rebellion and a Darth Vader on the Empire.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, look, if everything had played out differently for the Skywalker family, right?
Yep.
They would have ended a lot differently. Because Padme's main role was not trying to stop the war, it was asking, why are we going to war again when we just got out of it? Even if we technically didn't win, even if we technically didn't lose, we just got out of one. We don't need to go right back into it. we will literally be raising children in a never-ending cycle of go to war, we take like a 2-month break, and then we're right back at it again. That's not a smart way to keep doing things. It also brings into question the need for the Jedi in a time of quote-unquote peace.
Well, that's one of the interesting things about it, is that the Jedi aren't. I think that, like, Mace Windu says it in the second movie, that we're keepers of peace, not soldiers. Could the Jedi fight? Yes, they were very competent in combat, but that wasn't their job.
Yeah.
Their job was supposed to be as ambassadors and diplomats, more or less.
And then everything changed when fucking Palpatine got into office.
Everything changed when the Fire Nation did something. Anyhow, the events of episode 2 and 3, well, and the Clone Wars in general, like, you can see how individual characters are trying to stop what is happening. And Padme is a good example of one of those characters that has we have this separatist movement. They're unhappy with the Republic, but we can sympathize with their complaints and come to a peaceful solution. But that peaceful solution was impossible because the person in charge of the Republic and the person in charge of the Separatists was the same person and wanted them to fight.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you can't be on both sides of the debate. Why? It's self-interest.
The other people can't make peace between the two sides when one person controls both sides and wants them to fight each other. Heck, you can't make peace between two sides when one side wants to fight.
I think that's the reason why when somebody tried to tell me, it's like, oh, well, Hella, you never take sides on anything. I'm like, do you want to know why? It pisses both of them off because I refuse to admit either one of them is right or badmouth that the other is wrong. Being a neutral like that bothers them. Well, I'm over here just sitting here eating my fucking chips and going, I'll wait, because eventually one of them is going to screw up enough that I can figure out who's reasonably going to win this argument and go there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when it's an argument about, okay, which Star Wars film is best? Like, sure, neutrality is a fine position to have on that situation.
Right, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, people like to argue about really, really stupid stuff. Guys, it's a show. Yeah. Calm down.
Yep.
But yeah, like, the actual...
And of course, we all, like, when it comes to Star Wars, there is no film that is more divisive than Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
I personally like the Christmas special, but...
A very hot take. I will let it slide.
Yeah, I've actually never seen it. That's why I'm like, I have heard of it. I've never seen it.
I have not, I've not seen it in its entirety. I've seen bits and pieces of it. It's a film that is very clearly like the epitome of, here is a thing with Star Wars on it. It has Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Yeah. You want to know what it is, actually? I feel like Han Solo in all of it, and I do just mean all of the Star Wars films that Han Solo reasonably is going to be in.
Yeah.
Han Solo. You could have, at this point in time, after everything and you got your ship back, you could have just ditched these two and been like, cool, peace out, bye. Your guys' stuff sounds way too complicated. But he didn't, because I think somewhere way, way, way deep down inside of you, I think you actually really gave a shit about people.
Oh yeah, for sure. That is a thing of Han Solo's character. That as much as he, in like when he is first introduced, his character in The Empire Strikes Back, when he returns in The Force Awakens, as much as his character says, yeah, I don't care about people, I don't care about stuff, he cares. He does.
This has gone from a Star Wars talk to just the extended family of the Skywalkers.
Well, realistically, that is what the 9 Star Wars films are, although they deviate a bit from that in 8 and 9, in my opinion. But yeah, like that's what that series of trilogies is. It is the family drama of the Skywalker family, put across the geopolitics of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, it's like, look, you're technically watching a telenovela that also has political intrigue. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Either the geopolitical intrigue is there to keep you interested in the universe, or the telenovela is there to keep you interested in the people.
Yeah.
And frankly, I actually think it works. I think that it does a decent job at doing both of those things. As much as people will complain about the dialogue and the prequels, or the campiness of the original,
I think people need to just take a chill pill.
Or the lack of long-term story planning in the sequel trilogy. Like, there's a lot of there are multiple things that are multiple directions that the Star Wars films approach that, even if they are not done exceptionally well, there's enough of it there to be interesting to a lot of different people.
Right. Like, when they introduced the midichlorians and all of that, it's like, okay. The midichlorians have absolutely fucking nothing to do with this, actually. They just had to make it sound smarter than it is.
Yep.
It's Space Wizards, guys. It's Space Wizard with glow stick. Just enjoy it.
We did not need a science-y explanation for the Space Wizard.
But we got one, and it's like, okay, I feel like this is for the people that kept bemoaning of like, but how do you know?
Yeah.
What? What do you mean? Can you levitate
like,
stuff?
Well, to a degree, it's well, now that I have this science-y explanation, I'm disappointed.
Yeah, you know what I feel like when they try to do this, when they try to really hard to shove in science-y explanations to non-science-y, like, media, I'm like,
yeah,
guys, there's a whole YouTube channel dedicated to deconstructing stuff and making it sound super smart. It's called Game Theory or Film Theory. Go there. If you're just here to watch it, you don't give a fuck about the actual explanation.
Yeah, like to be fair, YouTube was not a thing in 1996.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, I mean people now, when they're like, but what is the deep-seated explanation? What is the dark lore of the Pumpkin King? Did you ever stop to think maybe there isn't one? Like, the author didn't get that far. The author had an idea, they ran with it, and now you guys want more explanation, and the author's... Ooh, gotta think of something real quick.
Yeah.
Midichlorians.
I mean, there's also occasionally the author going, look, I have an explanation for this, but it's not important. You don't need to know. I'm not going to tell you.
That is also an answer. Like, I know for me, for my book, is there an explanation to how all of this works? Yes, and I will spoon feed it to you as you need to be spoon fed for it. And then right when you think she's not going to explain it, I'm just going to have a whole chapter dedicated to this explanation, and I hope this will put this conversation to rest forevermore. Amen.
Yeah. And in the story that my wife and I are working on, like, there is a magic system in that world. Like, and we've been working out the kinks of how to make that magic system, like, both internally coherent and also so that it isn't like a fix-all button within the system of the world. But the actual intricacies of how that magic system works might not be in the books. It certainly isn't going to be in book 1.
Well, I think that is the reason why when some people go, like with the new trilogy that came out, when they were like, but we don't understand, why is it a girl? Why does she know stuff? I'm like, guys, did it ever stop to occur to you that the author of this was just writing? There's not a deep-seated philosophical, political standpoint. Sometimes authors just write stuff because it works in the context of this story, and we're gonna move on with it.
And I actually have strong opinions on that, because I would argue that aside from Daisy Ridley's character being able to do a Jedi mind trick in the first film, other than that scene, everything else is explainable from what is presented on screen in the film.
Right, like
for why she would be competent at particular things.
right, when she gets the Millennium Falcon back up and running, it's like, guys, she literally grew up on a junker planet. You're gonna sit there and tell me she's, what, 17, 18 years old? She never picked up a how to fix things? Like,
Yeah.
guide?
Well, and like, oh, how is she able to pilot it? We can see the flight simulator thing in her home. Like, they leave us the clues on screen for how she would have learned or figured out to be able to do certain things.
Also, the fact that John Boyega,
sorry. I'm gonna go off on this for one moment.
Go ahead.
The criticism of her being able to hold her own against Kylo Ren in their lightsaber fight, I would make the argument on two things for why that's possible. One, Kylo Ren was wounded, like he was shot with a bowcaster a couple of minutes before. Has to impact your fighting ability a little bit. But the other thing is that Rey, we have on screen that she knew how to defend herself with a staff, and the way that she fights with the lightsaber is reflective of fighting with a staff. It's actually something that they do quite well, not cinematography. When you combat in a film. I don't remember that word. The point being is that her fighting style with the lightsaber is reflective of fighting with a staff, not a sword. So they purposely changed her, like, they purposely have her fighting in a style to mimic that of fighting with a staff.
Yeah, like if you watch really close, this isn't really sword fighting like how Ren is fighting. He's fighting like it's a sword. She's fighting like a kid that picked up the biggest stick in the yard and is about to go smash anything they can find.
Yeah. Yep. There is a really interesting piece of lore to that as well. Like, it's not needed to appreciate what's going on screen in the film. But the lore of his particular blade with the two like little tiny lightsabers that go out the side of the hilt, They have lore that causes the, or maybe it's just blades in general, that it basically it makes it harder to swing the lightsaber is the net effect, which also helps explain his fighting style. Like it's his lightsaber is janky, and so he has to wield it in a different way from how you would ordinarily wield a lightsaber. And that kind of deep lore things are, it's one of the reasons why I appreciate so much of Star Wars, in that they have these little explanations to add. You don't need it to appreciate what's on the screen, but it adds an additional little flair to what is going on.
Right.
And for me personally, it's where I think it's where for me personally I can't appreciate episodes 8 and 9 as much, because I think they lose a lot of that in those films.
Yeah, again, do we, the audience, absolutely need to know the deep philosophical lore? No. But when we do, it makes it like, oh man, now I understand better.
Mm-hmm. Or oh, that's a real, like, oh, this is a really cool, interesting thing to know about this thing. I didn't need to know it to understand what was going on, but now that I have this, I understand what's going on even better. Which is in contrast to, like, oh yeah, midichlorians are what the Force works off of. Like, that's one area where, well, we really didn't need to know that. Like, that's a thing where it was probably better left a mystery. But knowing, hey, here is how a lightsaber actually functions, or how this specific lightsaber actually functions, to explain why it is wielded in this way, like, that adds more depth to the universe in a way that can be appreciated by we, the audience.
Right, I remember watching this, before I finished it, I was like, they have a button to turn these on and off. Why doesn't their opponent just turn off their damned glow stick? I don't understand. And then I finally got around to an explanation of, they're trained from a really young age to basically hide where the button is from their opponent, so that way they can't be turned off. And I was like, oh, maybe they should make that known to the audience, because the entire time I was watching all of it, I was like, just turn his fucking lightsaber off. This is a non-issue.
Just turn off the glow stick.
Legitimately. So until I got told that, I was like, I don't know, I think that would have been really funny to watch two kids learning how to do lightsaber duels, and then one of them just like, stop turning mine off! Stop letting me turn it off!
I have run across a very amusing GIF that is a cartoon Luke and a cartoon Vader that are just using the Force, clicking the lightsabers on and off again. So it's just on a loop of the lightsabers blinking on and off.
Again, I understand that Star Wars is very much that kind of a medium, but also the potential for the comedy in that is astronomical. It's just it's not what the actual show is about. You need to calm down.
Yep.
And you also need to stop making it so grimdark. Jesus Christ.
Well, and that's one of the things that the original trilogy, I think, does a pretty darn good job on, is mixing in a very specific flavor of comedy. That also fits with, like, the world and the story. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Like, there's this is actually in Empire Strikes Back, that C-3PO comes to Han Solo with like a like odds of navigating an asteroid field, and Han Solo fires back the never tell me the odds. That is a moment of comedy in a very serious scene. As they're trying to evade the Empire. When in the original film, there's also another somewhat dry humor scene of Han Solo coming back from the pilot seat, basically saying, "Hey, I told you I'd lose those Imperial slugs," and Luke continues training with a lightsaber. Chewbacca and the droids continue playing their game. Obi-Wan continues observing what Luke is doing, and Han Solo just dryly says, "Don't everybody thank me at once."
Yeah,
there's that kind of comedy. It's not slapstick.
right.
But it has its humor in it.
I think that's the thing that makes me sometimes want to just shake people. It's like, guys, I promise you, there is a way to balance all of this out that works if you let it.
Yeah. Yep, you need to know what the tone of your film or the tone of the universe is. It's one of the things that when I first watched episode 8, I considered a early red flag for me on how the movie was going to go relative to previous Star Wars films. When Poe Dameron in his X-Wing is making a "your mama" joke to General Hux. Because for me, that's not Star Wars. That's not how these films and universe work.
Well, yeah, that's like when you go into a fantasy setting and somebody is like, "I've got a royal flush, it beats your 3 pair." I'm like, no. They wouldn't use cards like we do. Somebody would throw down, it's like, "I've got a 3 of knights. I've got a hangman and crows, I beat you." Then you know it's high fantasy, because it's like, what the fuck is a hangman and the 3 crows? I'm curious now, because these cards look like tarot cards, and I don't understand how that works. You have to make it make sense. Even if your audience is so confused on, what? You gotta make it make sense.
Yeah. There can be times where you have some real world carryover, but it still has to make sense in universe if you're doing that. And in the case of what was going on with that kind of humor in episode 8, that isn't what Star Wars has been up until now. And maybe, I will concede, maybe you can get away with shifting that. But you probably shouldn't do that shift in the middle of your new trilogy of Star Wars films.
Yeah.
That seems like a kind of shift that would be more appropriate for one of your anthology films that are branching out from your main Skywalker storyline.
Yeah. Just
and frankly, when it comes to a lot of my criticisms of episode 8, that's really what a lot of them will end up centering on, is that exploring a lot of the ideas that this film was exploring, breaking some of the mold of what Star Wars had been up until that point. Yeah, I can back that, those ideas and Star Wars stretching, so to speak, in what it's doing. I very much criticize doing that especially like during your new sequel trilogy, especially the middle movie of your new sequel trilogy.
Yeah?
I would fundamentally argue that keep with the general themes of what your sequel trilogy of what the previous trilogies have done up until now. Continue that thread for another trilogy. Maybe you can bend it a little bit, but you shouldn't be breaking it in half.
Right. Again, if you're gonna throw in our world realism, that's fine. You're gonna have to paint it a different color so that way it blends into your universe and we don't immediately go, something doesn't belong.
Yeah. I mean, like that's something that the original series did well, I think, with the game that Chewbacca and the droids were playing, in that you look at that board and you have this resembles chess. Like, it's a bunch of squares, it's a bunch of different critters, it's holograms, so they can actually, like, attack each other, so that's cool. But it's you can look at it and go, oh, this is a science fiction version of chess. And in other Star Wars material, they refer to a card game called Sabak.
Mm-hmm.
That this is poker. Like, it's not exactly poker, but it is basically the Star Wars universe's version of poker. I think you see it on screen. Yeah, it's on screen in the Han Solo movie.
Mm-hmm. I never watched that one, so.
Not very many people did. I think that is the only Star Wars movie so far to lose money.
I kind of feel like ever since Disney, right, The Great Mouse Machine only ever views things from the lens of money. So when they assume, oh, this property did really good, let's just double down on it. Maybe don't. Mm-hmm. Like how they're doing with the Marvel franchise, it's like, I feel like the Time Traveler's Wife with all these fucking spin-off series. I am so lost. And I'm like, I think I want to take like a hardcore diet break from this for like the next 2 years because I'm kind of burnt out on it.
Yeah, I myself have, again, like if it's only on Disney Plus, I have not seen it. Now I also don't see that many films or TV shows in general, at least in recent years. But when it comes to the MCU, like, I will acknowledge, yes, I have seen the films that have come out in movie theaters. I have seen all of them at least once. And even now, like, moving past Infinity War, it is kind of okay, we have more MCU films, but like they seem to be trying to tie together swords towards something bigger, but I can't tell what it is exactly. Maybe they need to put this on the back burner for a little bit and get their ducks back in a row.
Yeah, this is like when a series goes on way, way, way too long, I feel like the author themselves loses the thread of what they were trying to say, where it's like, maybe wrap it up like in fewer books so you can keep track of what you're trying to say.
Yep.
I think that's why,
as you say, the mouse loves its money. And it is unfortunate to see some of these properties and stories suffer because presumably they'll keep making money.
Well, that's like what they did to the Owl House. Complete tangent from the Star Wars talk. They kneecapped it so hard, and I'm like, but why? This is actually really fun. What happened?
I've heard nothing but good things about the original Owl House. I haven't seen it, but I've heard nothing but good things.
Yeah, it's a bunch of good stuff. And somebody told me it's like because of the gay, and I was like, what? Like that shows up like 4 seconds like every other episode. That doesn't even count.
Yeah. It's like, oh, was this too much for the mouse? Really? Okay.
I think because Disney has to play favorites, I think because China and other Asian countries just don't like seeing that. I'm like, you guys make a lot of gay baity shit for not liking it.
I've heard that argument as well, and I think that it applies more. I think it applies more to movies than to TV shows. As a justification, honestly, I think the thing with the TV shows is that they're trying to strike the careful balance of appealing to the LGBT community within the United States while also appealing to like the hardcore conservative Christian group within the United States.
One has more expendable income.
Yep.
I'll leave it at that. But with that, we are officially out of time. Thank you so much, Paco, for coming on to Tea Time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation, both on Star Wars and on the problems of multimedia corporations.
Thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. I will link, like I said, Paco in the description if you want to go give him a follow and see what he likes to say.
Thank you, Hel. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Have a good time. Bye!
Bye-bye.